These are the laws made by the king of the fire tribe. They govern all in the land of the spelled flame of Arma, including the king. Scripture 1. Secession. Scripture. Inside King's Law. Scripture is the section unto itself of King's Law. Hierarchy rank. This is the order of session due to death / out of land or under spell. King. Then. Queen. Then. Prince. Then. Princess. Then. Head prebuk. Then. Majesty prebukes by vote of the 5. If all are not present, the tribe will devolve into anarchy. Scripture 2. Language. Defilements. Breaking of King's Law. Scorns. Breaking of King's 3 crown laws. Scripture 3. Crowns of scorn. 3 crown laws. Scorn laws result in death by hanging. 1. Murder unless in preserving of life. 2. Non-marital or marital physical harm. 3. Slavery or indenture servitude. Scripture 4. Dying wish. The dying wish laws. 7 laws the king cannot change, made by Kronze for his heirs. All military and prebukes are taught to not obey if the king asks to defy the dying wish laws. As followed. 1. Dying chambers can't be closed, the death penalty cannot be overturned or abolished. 2. Abolishing of marriage. 3. Installments of one God law. 4. The killing of individuals outside Taria court by state. 5. Gluts of treasure. To high tax outside of wartime. 6. Non-retaliation strike on tribes. 7. The rank law is enacted if the king is under spell or outside force. Scripture 5. Redress. Judgments are results of redress. Redress. The act of incitement and applying of King's Law. By way of state office inside Taria establishment. All accused of defilement or scorn. Outside of office in time of war. Must be allowed confession to the state before judgment. There is no overspeaking or loss of decorum in redress. Scripture 6. Prebukes. Books are graduates of King's Law awaiting selection of the king to be a judge. Prebukes are judges of King's Law. The head prebuk is the only to communicate with all other prebukes. All lower prebukes answers to him and he the king. There are 3 levels of prebukes under the head prebuk. 1. Majesty prebukes. 2. Crest prebukes. 3. Tar prebukes. Majesties deal with the highest crimes in the land. Severe phi et crime up to scorns. Severe crimes outside scorn are anti-arma crimes. Defilements. Treasure defilements over 9,000 glare rocks. And body alterations in physical violence. Crest prebukes deal with merchant and military acts not worth of majesty courts. Tar prebukes deal in civilian matters outside of severe crime or scorn. Prebukes can never leave the land while in term duty. There must always be 5 majesty prebukes. Crest prebukes cannot exceed 20 members actively. Tar prebukes cannot exceed 40 members actively. All prebukes serve terms only set by the king and ended by the king. The label of buk is only established after completing first seminary trials in Grace City. Prebukes can only serve after being selected by the king. At buk unions. Reunion of completion meetings at first seminary. Prebukes can never marry bukes. Scripture 7. Healers. Healers are magic dealers in the fire abilities. Learn from the Queen's trials in Mother City. Healers can never refuse help. At any time of day if not already at duty. Healers are only approved to give wealth of self metrics to members of the state. By maidens of mothers' temples. Mother temples are Arma hospitals. Located in every city in Arma. Maidens of mother temples are the head of those temples. They can only be given that name by the standards of the head maiden of mother city. Death after dealings of healer or maiden in mother temples cannot be scorned without proof. Wealth of self is the spiritual connection of a healer to a person. For sound mind and body checks. Or the peacetime of an off-duty guard for 2 weeks of the year. Scripture 8. Capital. The city as of the second king is no longer known as Glare City. It is now forever known as Gray City, as it does not interfere with the 7 dying wish laws. Any excess treasury not in use is to be stored in the crown's rock. Scripture 9. King's animals. Black eggs are to be surveyed and destroyed by the king and his guards only. Amendment. Black eggs are now to be destroyed out of sight of the layer of said egg by owner. Impermissible treatment of egg layers is a defilement. Warrant of 1 re week. As Tarae property in dungeon. Scripture 10. Dungeon life. Dungeon by ratio equivalent time to crime. Treasure ratio. Under 50 glare rocks. No more than 3 months. Between 51 and 2,000 glare rocks. No more than 5 years. Between 2,000 and 9,000 glare rocks. No more than 10 years. Anything after 9,001 glare rocks. Life in the dungeon. Non-physical ratio. If said effect of defilement lasts longer than and between a month in harm to 1 year in harm. Prebuk is to give a minimum of 1 year to a maximum of 3 years in the dungeon. If said effect lasts longer than a 1 year in harm, Prebuk must give a minimum of 4 years to life in the dungeon. Physical ratio. Non-visible marks of harm outside of marital and non-marital acts will be dungeon no more than 1 year. Physical marks with body intact that can be hidden are dungeon no more than 5 years. Physical marks unable to be hidden are given 30 years in the dungeon. Physical marks that result in body detachment / body misfunction / or any other several body alterations that don't result in death must be met with life in the dungeons. Scripture 11. Defacement, dishonoring the dead. The dead is only to be touched or altered by groundskeepers. Only groundskeepers can bury the dead. All graves must never to be moved without the approval of said religion and the king. The dead is not to be denamed, insulted or name changed. Scripture 12. Privileges of creation, ownership of property made. Creators must be credited and asked permission for use of their creation. Creator cannot be taxed twice for creation. Thus any loans for future expansion of creation cannot be taxed. All creations for the state will be property of the state, and no longer given privilege of the creator. Scripture 13. King's Eye standards. Approval metrics of items to be sold. Product cannot be made to kill if sold to citizen. Product cannot weigh more than purchaser without warning on said product. Product cannot present as what it is not. Product cannot mock any member of society, especially the royal family. Product cannot display depravement, body parts or non-marital or marital acts. Only temples can make image of said worshipped deity. No spell magic can produce igniting products without military approval. Scripture 14. Lands. All land not in use of civilians can be seized and used by the state. Only structures of the state can be gated. No home can mimic the first king. Kronze castle on King's Island. No more than 2 trees can be cut down by a non-state laborer every 6 months. Scripture 15. Markets. Merchants cannot promise outside king laws of product. Merchants cannot refuse refund of product within a day of product to purchase act. Product cannot be made outside of King's Eye standards. No child can purchase product outside of food from merchant without guardian. Merchants must pay 12% of all earning to the royal family while open to city markets. No unpaid loan by king shall result in breaking of the dying wish law. Nor go unjailed according to debt-to-dungeon ratio. Structure labor cannot take place on King's Day, the birthday of the king. No labor boss can refuse work to any qualified worker when in need. Workers of all markets and duties must be giving a break. No longer than 2 hours a day. Except for king's guards. All landowners must pay 5% of annually treasure spoken to the clerk. Scripture 16. Population and tax. All members must answer honestly to king's clerk count, king's census for tax and entail reasons. Clerk count must happen every 1 year. Scripture 17. Passion. No religion can stop a union from taking place. Outside state inquiry. The privacy of the matters of union is to be upheld. Physical harm of one in the union to other will result in family of phi ek. Paying 20 rocks to the harmed. To use freely outside union. Marriage ceremonies are to only mimic the ceremony of the king. No marriage can be ended outside of infidelity without the king's approval. No non-marital or marital unwillful acts, proven to be true in redress, will result in dungeon time. All will be considered scorns of king's law. Non-marital and marital acts with ones outside of union must end said union without regard of those in said union. Persons 19 and under are not to engage in non-marital or married acts. Those 5 years further 19. Proven in such acts with those 19 are considered scorn of king's law. Cedars of women must marry said woman. Refusal will result in dungeon. With all wages of father given to family of said woman. Formal wear in public cannot result in depravement of expression. Outside of bathing in trial establishments or natural bodies of water. Scripture 18. King's animals. Was. Lizards. Cannot be sold back to original owner. Or sold a third person. Thus they can only be sold once and forward. Lays are considered equivalent to 1 count. As members in Arma. Scripture 19. Royal grace. All must bow to royal members of the family. All must bow to crest when in redress. Conspiracy against the royal family or country must be met with life in the dungeon. No defilement or scorn acts is to abandoned by said causer. Untruths to the royal family or tare officers. Prebuke. Clerks. Crest or guard. Is considered a defilement and subject to a fee. If proven in tare court. Prebukes haven decretion of payment up to 2,000 glare rocks. Failure of pay resulted in treasure ratio. Scripture 20. Family city and trials. Head of trials cities outside the royal family member associated with name. Female head is known as head maiden. Male head is known as head of house. Male non-Naga staff are known as stewards. Female non-Naga staff are called mistress. All to take upon being Naguas must take for 6 non-break months at Arma Hall. The trip ally, subject of each 3 days, general studies. Trip ally approved by the King's sessions. Must be 3 days a week minimum. 1. Studies of the sky and earth. Science. 2. Metrics of numerics. Math. 3. Spoken word and poem. Mortal and spirit language. The trip ally requires day break to half day in practice. Spirit studies must be 2 days. Of an RE week. These studies requires day break to day's end in practice. The trip ally and spirit studies cannot be held on the same day. Nagu. Teacher or instructor. Must devote 5 unmarriable years to trials. No one can be labeled engineer without the approval of Nagu engineers in Grace City. And motto. Celebrations of trial completions. Must take place in each family city of the family certificate their alumni. Heads of house and head maidens must get the approval of a corresponding author. At Tarno. Tarno is the ability spell's scroll temple. Quimber robes are to be freshly pressed and presentable at the time of the final and motto in first city. Quimbers are all styles of Tarno in one. Any allegation by a Moa student against an authority figure is to be looked into. If true, the accused will be punished according to defilement or scorn. If false, the Moa student is to work in the Yele pits for a week. Lizard sewer burning pit. Sister school is exempt by way of age. Sister school Moa is to be counseled. Sister school is for ages 6 to 11, with lessons starting at age 7. For grace period of a year. Brother or son city is for ages 12 to 14. Mother city is for the ages 15 to 17. First city trials are for 18 to 20. Nagu and Moane are never to court or marry. Defilement will not go unrecognized. Scripture 21. Tar tournaments. Tar tournaments are tournaments where Moanese display their fire abilities in competition. To the royal family. Tar tournaments are always optional. No match can result in death. Causers will be scorned. Only in motto completion allows for entrance in tar tournaments. 5 matches are promised to each Moane, with 3 out of 5 to qualify for the last sword match. Last sword match is only for all one qualify. Last sword is a brawl of many until only one sword is left drawn. The winner of the last sword must be awarded the Queen's Mark, a golden spell arm bracelet inspired by the healing powers of the first queen. The Queen's Mark allows you to instantly heal from non-severe injury. The Queen's Mark is made by a rare flower dust and fish oil mixed with gold. Only one can be given every year. Scripture 22. The guards of Arma. King's guards must uphold King's law. King's guards must protect Arma Knight's life with their own. King's guards must be approved by wealth of self metrics. Admitted by healers of Mother City. Healers must believe no spell or physical condition would restrict the guard from duty. King's guards are subject to King's law. Guards can only break with their king if said king violates the 7 dying wishes. Guards are subject to repay any damage to any citizen's belonging within their duty by way of king's wage, if said act conflicts with duty. Outside of wartime, each guard is granted 2 weeks of the Re's calendar of wealth of self, a year from duty. King must approval of said time. No office of state can be without the emblem of state when at duty. The fire tier emblem. To refuse an order in time of war is to be met with 5 years in the dungeon. No redress is needed for proof. War crest is high prebuk outside Arma when at war. To refuse detainment of guard is defilement of King's law outside of any additional acts. Scripture 23. Matters of soul and body. Spells of body, by way of ingestion. Alterations to the mind must be approved by state and non-public in act. Thief of any state property results in dungeon time, subjective to the dungeon ratio, and or possession of Phi X property, subjected to the treasure ratio as payment. Sawboles cannot marry outside religion. 24. Amendments by King. King's law changes are called amendments. No 2 laws can exist against each other. They will render each unenforceable. Each amendment must be given 1 week for the first seminary to reflect in its library. Thus laws prior to amendments cannot be redressed until first seminary reflects said amendment. Scripture 25. Military. Military subject. Military subjects are areas only the military can address. This includes at sea, in the mountains, or in the presence of other tribes or undisclosed action by king's wish. War crest law. War crest laws are only subject of judgments in war by the king and war crest. General of the military. Outside of the 7 dying wishes, the war crest and king are allowed full discretion of themselves when at war. All members of crest and military are approved by the head prebuk. Only the king can override this approval. Military and guard must maintain a safe water, land and air of Arma. Military is responsible for the non-citizens' access in Arma. Fog ships are first to respond to any military subject. Blaze ships are used for sensitive voyages and high-stress events. All non-military procedures are second in priority when in the presence of military. Outside of those that restrict with king's law or risk of life, military is immune to scorn by way of duty. Military only bound to king's law inside Arma. Outside of Arma, the military is bound by war crest law. All members of the military are never to tell an untrue to the royal family. The military cannot cause damage to property or life outside of the king's orders unless in secession. Majesty judges are exempt from this power of the military. Military members are as followed. King's guards. Informant of king's law. Ingmen. Officers of sensitive military acts. Navlaws. Shields of the military. Oaths. Life guardians of the king at war or outside Arma. War crest. Head of the military when at war. Head of the massees. Ship captains when not at war. When at war, a steward massey of non-military ships are selected by the royal family. Scripture 26. Heir to throne. The only person to replace the king after death. Outside of Scripture, one is an heir to the throne. Son or daughter to the king. Only those wed by king can be considered queen. Only those born of king and queen can be prince or princess. Previous king or queen still bear the title of name, but the active king and queen are the only to be followed. At the age of 20, heirs can act as king, if vacancy is to take place before age. Scripture 1 is enacted of previous reign until legal age is reached. No one outside of the bloodline can wear the crown, or sit in the throne of Arma, nor call themselves king. Such act is resignation of duty, which enacts Scripture 1 of king's law for the active members of state. And if not present, the previous members of state will replace said resignation. The royal family name, endorsed by gods of the spelled flame, are the Horrocks. Horrok is the only bloodline to Arma. Scripture 27. Non-family reference. Anyone outside the royal family must address the king as High Constitution before any other name. Scripture 28. Treaty of Allied Tribes. The tribe of Valwyn is the allied of Arma. The body of Kara is recognized as the leadership of Valwyn. Any grievance between tribes is subject to the stands of both Tarai courts and Kara parliament courts. Any conflict of said issue, unresolved by courts, shall be resolved by diplomacy between King of Arma and Speaker of Body. Trade actions between both tribes are subject to both King's law and Kara's body decrees. If in distress and called upon, both tribes must aid in the distress whomever asked, in accordance with said tribe laws. It is the decision of both governments of said ocean, that in the member of one King Riminer of Ishban, that all parties name the shared body of water, Riminer Ocean. It is the decision of both tribes that Nile Park is to be seen as non-residential, nor pathway for both tribes to travel. Scripture 29. State immunity. Civilians of Arma can redress any head of state office outside of Scripture 1. for acts of defilement against them. Any accusation of members in Scripture 1 can only be judged by the king and not Tarai court. Scripture 30. It is recognized by king's law that the hills of the Uins of Arma's first days be known as Drun Fear, to honor the death of Arma's greats. Paraphir, author of the Shai, and Bay Drun, father of the first queen of Arma. The end.